that seminar in Bogota, we had learned about the planetary crisis, looking at especially at climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Our planetary boundaries, and a triple planetary crisis. But on the other hand, we also see different trends, and I would like to start with that first. We see that there's in general, like in the popularity of, for example, sustainability goods or goods which have a sustainable feature has increased over the last decade. Just looking at this on the left-hand side is just like a Google research or like people looking for sustainability goods has increased from 2016 to 2020 significantly, especially also on a global scale. Yeah, this is really showing that there's more consumer awareness about sustainability goods or services that are associated to a certain sustainability feature. But we can also see a similar trend if you look at the different generations, especially generations millennials or Gen look for more specifically for sustainability brands, which we can see here. But also they would also assume that they are also interested in also to invest even a bit more in the sustainability products and brands. Why is it important to look at this as well? Because especially millennials, Gen Z will be like the next generation who are have the possibility to invest in this kind of products or are purchasing on the majority this kind of goods. But if you look especially on the investor preferences, you see a similar trend. So especially the millennial Gen Z as well, they're looking also like for financial institutions who are investing in firms and also who also should influence also their environmental ESG performance. Also interestingly, and with that I would like to stop with this very short excursus. It's also interesting to differentiate between the different generations according to like which type of investors they are. And we see in Gen Z and millennials, we have 61 to 82% who would be considered as ESG investors. So really when they make a investment decision, taking consideration, looking really proactively towards ESG investment opportunities. And this holds also true when we look at especially the different investment types they're interested in. We look in this case for Gen Z as about stocks, equities, insurance-linked products, but also passives and ETFs, and similar can also be observed in the millennials. So why is this important? We see, on the one hand, we have like the push from the planetary crisis and the planetary boundaries, which we have discussed in Bogota, but we see also like there's more demand towards sustainability linked to sustainability green products or services in the market. And unfortunately, this has led to certain trend, which is labeled as greenwashing. And now we would like to have a quick look at concept strategies and case studies in this area. But before we start with that, maybe quickly to ask you can just type it in the chat or raise or just activate your microphone. Do you know any examples of greenwashing? When you think about what you heard maybe from the media, or in your personal environment or professional environment, do you know any examples of greenwashing? Just say anything what comes to your mind. Anyone?
Carbon credits.
Sorry?
The use of carbon credits with overestimated baselines.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other example?
Yes, I'll have many, but maybe just
okay.
to in the fast fashion industry, not only with carbon credits, that's also one, but also, you know, when they are actually including these targets, claiming that X% of the product is recycled. That's an example of greenwashing, because if you look at the materials and the origin of the material, that's anything but sustainable, but they are just claiming that they're doing so with recycling a very small percentage of their clothing, and they have the green dot there. So that's also another one I wanted to add. Thanks.
Yeah. No, totally. You're both right. There are many examples already out there. But I think like when we have a look, for example, like in general, we are confronted on an everyday basis with so many different advertisements. Just give you a few examples. We have Coca-Cola, no, really nice green background atmosphere, like no, do something for your health. Sweetness from natural resources, lower calories in this case for Coca-Cola Life. We have, as you correctly said, no plastic bottle which looks very amazing. No, you could assume, no, this bottle is made of plastic, really covered from the ocean, and to provide cleaner oceans, you could find even for Shine, which also, as you said, in the textile industry, our products, our planet, advertisements about that. Shell, no, high engine performance in sustainability packaging. You find other advertisements of no reduction of plastic, recyclable cups, McDonald's having a green label, Ryanair, one of the lowest low fare airlines, lowest emissions, lowest fares. This is I found very interesting. No, high-low and paper bottle, but if you look inside, what it is really is another question. Even like there were cases where banks are, in this case HSBC, doing a lot of advertisements, or even HM not really being conscious. So you see a lot of advertisements around the world because they cope. No, companies and financial institutions are coping with the trend, not because the demand is really there for sustainability-related products. But the question is this really greenwashing or it's not? It's sometimes very difficult to assess from the very first glance if you see a kind of advertisements. We'll get back to that, but before that, we quickly have a look at the definition, like what does greenwashing actually mean and where it comes from. So the term greenwashing was first used by Jay Westerwald in 1986, and it came actually from this this movement back then, save the towel, save our planet. So it came from the hotel industry. So back then, the hotels started like encouraging guests, like to save water by reusing the towels. I think this is in general, like we see it on every day. If we go to a hotel, we see something similar. But back then, the problem was that the main purpose of that clients or prospects are encouraged to not to change the towel every day was simply because of cost saving purposes, and not the main motivation was not to save the planet as it was here, but we like to save costs or laundry costs. And greenwashing as such is defined where a company uses advertise and public messaging to try to appear to be environmentally sustainable and greener than they really are. So this is a bit like the definition. We will have a look at different concepts in a few minutes. But what we should ask ourselves as well is like, why are companies engaging in greenwashing? We have mentioned already a few. We have here a Slido as well. So what do you think? Why do companies practice greenwashing? We have heard marketing. Maybe it's just what I just said. What else could be reasons why are companies practicing or are engaged in greenwashing scandals? You can either you can also directly write in the chat. It's also not a problem, but we have here still, we didn't know how many participants will participate. You can also activate your microphone. Just say, what do you think? Why do companies are practicing greenwashing?
Hello, can you hear me?
Ruben. Yes, we hear you.
Well, I think sometimes this happens because the PR strategy of any company is or the company is driven by the PR strategy, and the PR strategy kind of prevails in the message they want to send to the public. So they want to to show themselves as a company that is driven by sustainability values and and so they are, they are trying to sell themselves as that. So I think it's sometimes it's because of this, because PR strategy prevails to anything else, and that's sometimes what happens in some industries.
Yeah, very good and very point. Give you two more. Lack of knowledge of the implications and consequences, definitely. Claims of carbon neutrality without proper supports. I think, Christian, you have mentioned it also in the other chats. Yes, definitely. I think this is also relevant. And you see this is also one of the tactics which are used by companies. Investor demand, yes, as well. It's also true. Just one more participant who's typing. A hurry to show them as environmental friendly. Yes. No, if, for example, in this case, if the business model is not like adapted to like the demand as you have shown, no? So they come in a hurry and have to show something that they're doing, right? In general, it's important when we look at greenwashing cases that we distinguish between two different dimensions, which is intentionality with unintentionality. So intentionality, actually, this is what you have just said, right? So company really like appears to be environmental friendly for marketing purposes, sales purposes. So really like without really changing the business model behind it, right? So they also want to increase sales. They want to increase the revenues, also increase the revenues, and with that they are like labeling their products as sustainability or environmental friendly or whatever you might find there. But I think the most important one, and from my perspective, and which is like underestimated, is actually unintentionality. So what does it mean? It actually means like there's some companies and some institutions a lack of knowledge, for example, or they might do a wrong assessment due to the lack of tools or even data availability, and or don't take into account adequate science-based evidence of their claims they are doing. Now you have mentioned that I think you have mentioned of claims of carbon neutrality, Christian, earlier as well. So this could be one example. No, like a company is claiming, they have achieved carbon neutrality or net zero emissions, but if you really look at the process behind and the data they are using, you will see you might find it's not for all cases, but you might find cases where it's just not true, but it's not because they are willing to, they are intentionally breaking the rules or breaking the rules, but it's really like because there was not enough evidence to a bit more and to look later as well. But in general, like it doesn't matter whether it's intentional or unintentional, the impact is the same, right? So we have impact of greenwashing in this case. No, we have undermines the trust in the company as a positive force in sustainable transformation. No, and really like stopping like the trust in the company and the real economy to contribute positively to net zero, for instance, or to low emissions. But it can also divert investments, even talents and sales in the wrong direction where it should not go. And so in order to understand a bit better, like the different tactics applied and used by different companies, different tactics or strategies applied or used by different companies. The first one is green crowding. Actually, it builds on like that you can hide in a crowd, so to say. And what normally happens is you hide in the crowd, you have not really like the motivation, or the company doesn't have the motivation to be on the forefront of this initiative, but just continuing with the pace of the slowest of the slowest. So this is a bit like the idea or like of this concept. There's one very interesting example, which is the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. If you have a look at that and you see, for example, who has subscribed for it. So we have, for example, Shell or Total Energies or different other companies around the globe have signed to the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. You would think, okay, well, this is amazing. No, like they have joined forces or they have joined their forces in order to reduce to end plastic waste. But if you have a closer look, in this case, the EPVW was created by the American Chemistry Council, which even has lobbied against a global framework for global plastic pollution, then you see, okay, well, it's really not really like a very ambitious initiative. So this is one example, like of this category. The second one is called green lighting. So it actually means when the company communications, including advertisements, are spotlighting a particular green feature of the operations, but at the end they don't change the business model as such. This is problematic because it just leads the consumer to think, well, this company is really, or this company's financial institution is really sustainable, but at the end they don't change the business model, but just because they're just featuring their sustainability efforts. And we have the two examples. For example, there's Total Energies. They changed the name to Total Energies actually in 2021. And we're using the hashtag more energies, less emissions. So really like not trying to show, okay, that they are really they wanted to invest further in renewable energy projects as well. They did also, but if you look at the overall portfolio of Total Energies, is very, very small portion. Instead of like investing like significant amounts and really share their portfolio, or like to change the portfolio in general, they also even increased areas where they were exploring oil production, or increased also gas production in other areas. Really like shifting away, or focusing only in this case on the green features, which is investment in renewable energies. Another example, which has been happening in the UK, especially, was the case of HSBC. So in there, the Advertising Standard Authority, the ASA in UK, they fined HSBC to make because they're making unqualified sustainable claims. Similar here to Total Energies, that was around the COP26, when they had a lot of advertisements around that they are like supporting the transition, that they are making claims. They would like to invest a certain amount, up to 1 trillion, in financing investments to achieve to support their clients to achieve net zero. But it was really, if you look at the overall portfolio of HSBC, only a small portion, and because they were still financing a lot of like polluting companies. So this was like they were fined by the Advertising Standard Authority in the UK because of that. The third strategy is green shifting. I think this is also quite interesting strategy and tactic carried out by companies. So it's really like putting or blame or shifting the responsibility from their own company, from their own business towards the clients. And there are two examples in this case. It was Shell, ExxonMobil as well, who are in their advertisements were asking, for example, their consumers, how can you reduce your own footprint, for example? Or they're asking questions, would you prefer maybe to take the bike instead of the car? But at the end, like their business model, or they make money with the petrol, and also like with the gasoline, which are used for cars. So they were shifting the responsibility towards the consumer. Why are they driving so much car, for example? And this was there are two examples for green shifting. It's really like putting like the burden to the consumers. The next one, and I think this is like the most common one, which we find everywhere, is green labeling. So it's really where in this case, you have mentioned it already, where PR agencies and marketing departments called something sustainable, something green. But if you really look a bit closer, and this is also mentioned by you already, that the words are misleading. And if you look at a supermarket or any store, you find a lot of different terminologies which are used in advertisements, not from nature, degradable, ozone friendly, renewable, earth friendly, etc., etc. And many more that you could find on different products. At the end, you don't really know what it actually means. And there's a very good example It's about ocean plastic. There was a company who claimed, okay, well, our products are 100% made from ocean plastic. But the question was here, okay, what does ocean plastic mean? So no, and they had their own definition of ocean plastic. So they defined ocean plastic as ocean-bound plastic, which is a significant difference. So it actually means that they could collect, in order to label it ocean plastic, in the radius of 48 kilometers of an ocean or a waterway leading to the ocean. So just imagine all the big cities, like coastal cities such as Lima in Peru, Mombasa in Kenya, Jakarta, Indonesia, etc. You could just go to the city center, like or the cities, to the outyards, collect plastic and label it as ocean plastic or ocean-bound plastic. But this was not clear for the consumer. So this was a clear case on, in this case, on greenwashing based on the labeling of ocean plastic. The problem here is that there's no internationally recognized definition of it. So that, and there are similar examples of in case of airline carbon, what you already mentioned, also carbon credits, but also there was a case of a sleeping bag which have been introduced. If you look at just on the European Union, there are at the moment more than 200 different labels and 450 even worldwide. So it's really difficult to find the right way through this jungle of labels which you can find, which have similar denominations. The next one is called greenwashing. So it actually refers to where companies are shifting or moving their targets before they achieve them. So it would mean, for example, there were cases for Coca-Cola and Pepsi, for example. So they had in 2016 or 15 their targets for 2020. Say, okay, in 2020 we will reduce our emissions in our production by, I don't know, XYZ%. But then in 2018, before reaching the 2020, they announced a new, announced a new target, or we have a new target of 2030, reducing our emissions by XY%. So if a company is always like not changing before their maturity date, so to say, they're changing again their targets, and then this will be very difficult like to track, and they will cannot make accountable for achieving or not achieving their targets. So this is like a tactic which is called greenwashing. And the last one, and I think that we see already also some other new cases as well, especially in Europe, and from different international operating companies. It's called greenwashing. So it's actually that the corporate management teams underreporting or hiding the sustainability efforts because they are afraid of investor scrutiny. There are examples, for example, in the framework of the SFDR, so Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation in the European Union. So they have two different, like funds. Funds can be declared as two different article compliance. So the Article 8 and 9. Article 9 is funds that have specifically have sustainable investment as their objective. So the objective of the fund or have really a sustainability impact. They're also labeled as dark green funds. And on the other hand, we have the Article 8 funds, which have promote environmental or social characteristics as well as good governance, but it's not the overall objective of these funds to contribute to that. And when the regulations concerning the SFDR became more transparent and also has been developed further, then there were different asset managers from HSBC, Amundi, BlackRock, who have downgraded actually their initially labeled Article 9 funds to Article 8 funds, or classification below the SFDR regulations. So it also shows, okay, they had initially planned and had planned like, but then they could not cope with the strict requirements and had then said, okay, we have not to report so much in the Article 8 funds, so that it had to be downgraded. Another example is Lazada Group. Lazada Group is like the parent company of Lazada is Alibaba, so based in Singapore, one of the biggest e-commerce stores in Southeast Asia. And they have been accused of greenwashing. They had a greenwashing scandal because they were labeling different products as green, but they were not. And so after the scandal or after this reclaims, they just stopped communicating their green efforts in order to avoid that there will be further accusations. So this is like the fact of greenwashing, or the 6 different dimensions of greenwashing. Now I would like to quickly have a look at one case study, which is, I think most of you might familiar or have heard about, which is the DWS case. DWS is like a German private equity firm, which asset under management around 928 billion euros. And DWS sold investments as greener or more sustainable than they really were. So actually what happened there is that they have applied certain ESG factors in assessing their investments or their funds, but they were not really taken into consideration. So it's not mandatory for the investment managers and to really consider them. So there were really like a lack of the procedure, etc. So in this case, the former DWS sustainability chief, Desiree Fixler, revealed this problem, or first with the management board, but there was no reaction. So based on that, she quit and then also make this publicly. There were there are 2 different processes. One was concluded already in the US. So the US Securities Exchange Commission, SEC, they fined DWS in the US on $25 million in September 2023. In Germany, the process is still ongoing. So this is one of the most prominent cases of greenwashing, especially in the financial sector. There are many more. You have mentioned, Ruben, you have also mentioned the Volkswagen example in the chat. Yes, this is also like one of the, unfortunately, again, Germany. But again, like there are many more out there. But yeah, you're right. The Volkswagen example is also one of the biggest scandals in the recent years. If you look a bit about the impacts of greenwashing, yes, we have on the one hand reputational risks. So that can lead, if you're accused of greenwashing, can lead like long-lasting effects on impacts on the ability to attract new clients, investors, but also creates certain direct financial losses. It also has some legal consequences we have seen and we will see later as well. Also, what is very important is can really or greenwashing practices can hinder transition to sustainable practices because it will somehow penalize also companies who are really making good and transparent efforts towards sustainability practices, and with that also slowing down the progress. And this is also again penalizing especially good performing companies because if there are more scandals, and this is what you can see already in the European Union, more scandals, there will be tighter regulation, and governments and government bodies are reacting to these scandals in order to avoid that. There are many directives at the moment under development in the European Union in order to just to reduce, for example, greenwashing cases in the private sector. So the question is now, if you know the impact, so what can be done about it? So what can we do in order to minimize greenwashing to minimum extent? I just said, no regulation, transparency is very important. No, we have the taxonomies in different countries in place. No, we have discussed it in Bogota as well. We have the Colombian taxonomy, but also in other countries, taxonomies are really good tool in order to provide transparency to the consumers. Disclosure regulations, as I said, like in the European Union, we have CSRD, SFDR, but also other regulations are implemented in other jurisdictions, other countries. The second one, and especially to address the problem of unintentional greenwashing or intentionality, which I've mentioned earlier, is capacity building. In order to, for example, to avoid unintentional disclosure of the combination or that the link, for example, to the targets, to the real outcomes is clear and also science-based. And last but not least, and I would like to quickly also show you one example. There are many AI tools also out there already in the market and also being developed at the moment in order to detect certain greenwashing cases. And one interesting tool which has been developed by the University of Zurich and University of Erlangen-Nuremberg in Germany is called Climate Bird, CTI, which is actually an innovative deep learning algorithm which analyzes specifics of climate-related commitments, which have the company, which over 15,000 companies have made, which are listed in the MSCI World Index from 2010 to 2020. And based on this data, they developed this called Cheap Talk Index. So it means comparing companies' sustainability communication with their actions. And they have found out here that the level of cheap talk, so like the content which companies or institutions have shown what they're doing has increased significantly since 2010. And this is especially also true because it did also analyze across different sectors. For example, if the financial institutions have a much more higher level in cheap talk in comparison, for example, to energy and utilities. And this links back also to what we have discussed in Bogota, no? The availability of data, because or data and also data gaps, which they found out that especially in financial institutions, they're really still challenging or have challenges with perceiving the data, emissions data, for instance, especially if we look at scope 3 emissions, and with that they're making statements, or they attempt to make statements which are considered in this case based on this analysis as, or to high level, also it's cheap talk. This a bit like to frame a bit like, or to conclude a bit like this first part, looking really about litigation, about greenwashing, and now this leads us a bit like to discuss, okay, and analyze and look, okay, about ESG litigation, and asking ourselves, okay, is it really next wave? What is happening around about it, and what are the cases which are currently being discussed? Before that, quickly, a quick definition. ESG litigation can be understood as the efforts of a variety of litigants, including governments, authorities, so it doesn't matter who is litigant, to align the business conduct of companies or state with current ESG objectives as defined exist in emerging domestic and national legal and quasi-legal frameworks. So just like a bit like a general definition. Legal claims related to sustainability performance, but we will also see to other areas as well. If we analyze a bit of VPC, for example, how it has evolved over time, we can really see that there's a strong increase, especially since the Paris Agreement. We have here differentiation between like cases on a global scale or in the US. You see, for example, in the US it's much higher than in other countries. But I think importantly, it's really like to recognize that 2/3 of all cases which have been, in this case, analyzed by this study have happened since the Paris Agreement. So we see there's a direct related. So the Paris Agreement is really used as a reference in order to make companies, but also governments accountable for their actions. We also see that it's not only a QS problem, but it's OS case, but you see here there have been cases in 51 different countries. So you see in Europe there have many cases, but Australia, but also here in Latin America there have been several cases which are related to climate litigation cases, but it's just like the national jurisdictions, but we're also talking about many, for example, 50 cases, which have been presented in front of international, regional courts, but also UN treaty bodies, etc., which is also cannot be underestimated. Apart from being a global phenomenon, also like ESG litigation cases are also becoming more and more a strategic instrument. For example, strategic litigation against companies is an area or interest of different actors, especially like to change the behavior. For example, also like based on the polluter pays principle, like making companies in this case accountable for their actions, but also against corporate frameworks, for instance. And one can consider that between 2015 and 2022, 80% of the cases which have been analyzed by this study could be classified as strategic or semi-strategic. So semi-strategic would actually mean, like that there's not the strategic purpose is not the dominant one, but it's also has a strategic dimension. And last but not least, also interesting to analyze and to see that it's not only affecting a few sectors, but it really like the diversity. It has been diversified strongly since 2021. Also the sectors which could be or which have been where different litigation cases has happened. No, we look at 15, especially we're looking at construction sector. We're looking at fossil fuel exploration, but also utilities, who were the main focus of climate litigation cases. But if you see, for example, 2021 and 2022, the diversity is much, much higher. So we cannot say that only a few sectors are affected, but really many, many more. I have introduced a bit like the concept of strategic litigation, and I would like to show you a bit like the diversity of different litigation cases which have been presented and which are being discussed. So we start with the first one, which is litigation cases against government frameworks. So in this case, that cases that are challenging the implementation or the ambition of the climate targets and the politics which are affecting the whole economy or the society in a certain country. So, but also similar litigation cases against corporate frameworks, really like companies or making companies responsible for their action. And also their strategies. There were cases, for example, like with Shell, but also BNP Paribas, etc., who should like include, for example, where for example they were forced to include certain, or change their, in this case for Shell, for instance, was the case in the Netherlands, like to make more stronger ambitions towards reduction of CO2 emissions, for instance. Then similar integrating climate consideration. It would mean like in the different procedures and principles and of the company, of the government, really to take seriously climate conservation, mitigation, but also adaptation. And another one, which is called turning off the taps. So in this case, stopping companies to invest in certain polluting areas, for example, that's by turning off the taps. And this came especially. These cases came especially by, for example, in certain asset management and asset managers by their shareholders. They said, okay, we don't want to invest in these areas anymore. Next one is failure to adapt. Similar, similar to considering climate conservation, but especially looking at adaptation. So if companies or companies or governments are not investing, not doing enough efforts to adapt to the adverse effects of climate change. Another one is like polluter pays. I think everyone knows about it. It's like really looking for compensation if a company or is polluting in a certain area, and then like the claim is to request compensation. Similar to greenwashing, we have climate washing. This also refers, as has been said, like to especially to certain targets. Where certain targets are set up, such as to achieve net zero, to achieve climate neutrality, to achieve deforestation free. But at the end, it's not true, because a lot of activities are just based on offset. For instance, there have been cases around that. Also, personal responsibility, especially against board members of certain companies who are accused of bad practices, but also, for example, against certain politicians. There was a case presented against the former Brazilian president Bolsonaro because of his responsibility for the Amazon deforestation. And last but not least, another strategy is about global guidance. Really like to look for, to move forward global action to mitigation and adaptation, especially. So these are, in a nutshell, like the different strategies which we can identify. And we would quickly like to show one or two case studies. The first
May
one
I
is
ask a question? Jonas, may I please ask a question before
yes,
you
please.
go to the study? I just wanted to find out, in South Africa, we don't have many legislated sort of ESG non-conformities, but we do have what we have, the National Environmental Management Act. We have our water use licenses and the like. But when it comes to companies that we know are greenwashing or climate washing, how do we go about holding them accountable if international courts are taking so long to penalize or make a sort of like, I don't want to sound harsh, but an example of someone, and so that when we are talking to our clients, whether they be private equity funds, whether they be the banks and the like, we have like some sort of reference for that.
So I think like it's always important like to see where the company is operating, like you are like accusing in this case, and based on which legislation, no? Especially you were mentioning a few acts already, and there have been even cases in South Africa, for example, against Shell. No, Shell wanted to, for example, to explore or like petroleum from the ocean and wanted like
yes, Kapaship, yes.
Exactly,
And
this was one, for
yes,
one case. And,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's just instances like that then we can enforce sort of like ESG compliance to companies at that extent.
Yeah, I think like the first step is always like the national legislation, like in national courts,
Yes.
and especially so in this it also depends on each jurisdiction. Like for example, in some area and in some countries it's more easier, for example, to, as you correctly said, to present legal cases against activities of the companies. In others, in other areas and other countries, it's more difficult because maybe the jurisdiction or there's no way, for example, or difficult access even like to courts, etc. No, I think this is like also that's why for example, we see, for example, US so many cases because it's relatively easy to present the case. And as you correctly said, like if you present cases on international level, I think there's always the question of like national sovereignty as well, and really whether like the international body has a faculty in this case against and the company and operating on the territory, for instance. Yeah. Okay. So I would agree. Like this is especially international cases against international bodies are quite time consuming. Yeah, correct.
Yes, and then I wanted to ask something. I mean, you went past it with regards to greenwashing. I wanted to also just so yesterday there was a big sort of like cyber attack on one of the banks here in South Africa. And they didn't say anything. They just kept quiet. I mean, we all understand why they would say that, because it would obviously scare investors off. Is that an instant of greenwashing, or is it just them protecting themselves?
Now, in this case, they're not making any claim, for example, which is related to an environment in this case. Now we're talking about a cyber attack. So this is like the cyber attack was against the institution. And I think it would be like a normal reaction from the company first, like to keep this below the radar in order to to cope with it, to make this the correct action. So I would not say this is a case of greenwashing. It would be different. It would be different. Well, just thinking, because the cyber attack, I never heard about a case which is related to that. Yeah, no, it would not consider this as greenwashing in this case.
That's good. Thank
you. So
I
also would like to mention, like in concerning greenwashing, like if a company is showing, for example, their environmental commitment, it doesn't mean automatically that it's greenwashing, right? If they can substantially prove, for example, that they are really or making the claims transparent, also where the data is coming from, that it's not greenwashing. Then it's just really like their responsibility and their the environmental efforts and actions they are taking. But the problem is, like, if there's not substantial information transparency to underline this their claims. I think this is like the biggest problem. No, like on the one hand you have the claim and you have the reality, and if this is not matching, then there might be a case of greenwashing.
Okay. No, I mean, I'm also, because I've also always been interested in the data center space, and I would think that if there's a cyber attack on one of my clients with regards to their data at my data center, then I would report that as a risk, and then also report it as some sort like a governance or structure, somewhere like that under the G and ESG. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Get it. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for the clarity.
No, happy to support. Let's have a quick look at 3 case studies, which shows different dimensions of litigation cases. So first of all, we are looking at the Huaraz case. Actually, it was a case presented by a local Peruvian farmer, Luciano Lluvia. It's supported by a German NGO, and they presented like a case against RWE, one of the biggest utilities, and also having different power plants, also coal-fired power plants, and not only in Europe and Germany, but also globally. And the argument brought to the court was that AWE GHG emissions contribute to climate change, causing in this case the melt of the glacier, which is here, which you can see on the picture, which is which is nearby a lake. And the village of Huaraz, or the city of Huaraz, is like located below this glacier lake. So the fear or the threat to this village is that if the glacier continues to melt, that the level of the lake will increase, and with that also provide a threat to the community. It was a case because you want to think, why is this like important and in climate litigation? But it's important because it was the very first time that the German court in this case admitted a case against an ERWE with impact on somewhere else in the world, in this case in the Peruvian mountains. The case is still ongoing, 2017, so 7 years already. Again, what you also said, Toledo, like very long-lasting court decisions. It was also into this bit like stopped by the COVID pandemic last year or 2023, and there have been site visits conducted. Really, like the court has sent scientific experts to the lake in order to see whether really like the melting of the glacier is attributed to climate change, and but the process is still ongoing, and I think there are several other hearing sessions to be taking place in 2024. Why is this case again important? So we're not talking about a big number like of compensation what Luciano Lluvia and also like the NGO are reclaiming. They're claiming for $20,000 for protection measures protection measures of their village. But if the court would make the decision in favor of Luciano Lluvia and the NGO, it would be like the first ever case where a company, in this case RWE, would be made accountable for the emissions from the past. So that's why a lot of interest is made towards this case. Another case, also quite interesting, is like this is a case from Germany. It's called DM. This is like German. It's a drugstore, and they have advertised their products with climate neutral and environmental neutral, and they were banned, so they can no longer advertise several of their brands as climate neutral and environmental neutral. The court found that there was insufficient information actually on the products themselves. So the products themselves to support the claims of climate neutrality. And recently there was another case against another German firm where also they have put like climate neutrality. So starting from now on, I think 2 weeks ago, if the company wants to provide or to claim that their products are climate neutral, they have to really directly on the product to show on which assumption this is based. No, they cannot, for example, achieve climate neutrality according to this to the court, based, for example, on compensation, compensation or offset. So if they do it, then they have to label it directly on the product as such, but it's not enough, for example, to just provide a QR code to an external link, but really forcing or changing the way of marketing in this case is using the terminologies of climate neutrality and environmental neutrality. Similar laws at the moment are happening, are being developed in the European Union to ban as well as these terminologies or to make it clearer, these terminologies clearer for the consumers, because one could think, okay, this product is climate neutral, so it could refer to the process, it could be to the packaging. So what the consumer would assume, but the consumer would not see in the first hand that it's climate neutral because of offset, for instance, or compensation. This is which will change in the European Union, and every company who is making business with the European Union will be affected by this regulation, which is now upcoming. Another case, also very interesting, and with that I would also come to close to an end. It's a case of Vermont, which is one of the states in the US. And they recently, I think beginning of June, so it was even after our meeting in Bogota, they become the first state to pass a law forcing the fossil fuels companies operating in the territory to pay for damages caused by climate change. So North and the Vermont was really hit by several heavy weather events such as floods, but also droughts, etc., really contributing to loss of assets, loss of agriculture, etc. So under this now Climate Superfund Act, what Vermont will do now, they will calculate the cost of greenhouse gas emissions between 1995 and 2024. So they have time until 2026, and then make the companies accountable and bill them, so to say, to invest in climate adapted and resilient infrastructure projects in order to cope with these damages or to reduce the damages in the future. And this is really one landmark. It's considered as a landmark legislation, and several states in the US have considered similar approaches, such as Maryland, Massachusetts, as well as New York. They're looking now really at the Vermont case to maybe implement similar, in this case, climate acts. Yeah, to look a bit about future, what are future trends which might upcome with regards to ESG litigation or climate litigation. As we have discussed, also we're not only looking at climate change, we also look at biodiversity loss. So we also expect that there might be more litigation cases also focusing on either on the biodiversity climate nexus, but also on the biodiversity loss or degradation of ecosystem services. We also might experience more cases related to the duties of governments and corporations to protect the ocean. Now, ocean is really important as a very of the biggest carbon sinks. Also looking litigation arising from extreme weather events. You could see this already in Europe and also other countries where different litigation cases are presented to courts after such extreme weather events, especially to make corporations, but also municipalities, for example, or any other stakeholder accountable for not investing or not doing enough to protect the population against extreme weather events where it's possible. Also looking at climate pollutants, cases about climate pollutants, as well as looking at international litigation cases or even crisis conflicts between different countries and different states. So this is what I would like to show you today, which would like to conclude. So the key messages here, that greenwashing is something which is happening at the moment, and especially it's important to consider that greenwashing is there, but on the other hand, we also could observe that there are many legislation happening in order to reduce greenwashing efforts. For that, as I said earlier, transparency is very relevant. Capacity building is relevant, such as we are doing today, and also in the framework of the training as such. If you're interested in looking at different other climate-related litigation cases, I invite you to have a look at the website here, climatecasechart.com. There you find US-based, but also non-US-based climate change litigation cases. Very interesting to have a look at it if you're interested in this topic. And with that, I would like to open the floor for any other questions you might have at this stage. And again, very sorry that at the beginning it was not, that the connection or the sharing of the screen was not working. But I think we have now managed it within this hour that we had foreseen for the session. So any questions from your side?
Yeah, I guess if I have no questions, and since we are a little bit over time, I would just like to thank everyone for participating, and do not forget that the registration will be available on YouTube as well as the other sessions. So thank you very much, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye. You too.